The Udvar-Hazy Center is a Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum's annex at Dulles International Airport. The center consists of two main exhibit hangars totaling nearly 400,000 square feet, along with a restoration hangar with a second-floor public viewing area and an observation tower that provides views of ground operations at Dulles International Airport, make up the 760,000 square foot area of this facility. Now, the day we were here, we spent an easy 4 hours just wandering around in awe. I am a self-proclaimed airplane nerd, and this place can just be overwhelming. There are several main attractions at the center, this being one of them. The Lockheed SR71 Blackbird. This long-range, high-speed, strategic surveillance aircraft could fly at 85,000 feet of speeds of above Mach 3.3. The really nice thing about the Udvar Center is, as you can see, you can get pretty close to some of these aircraft. This next aircraft needs no introduction. This is the Grumman F-14 Tomcat, made famous with my generation in 1984 in Top Gun, the original Top Gun. This is the Boeing 367-80, simply known as the Dash 80. It's a quadrijet prototype built by Boeing to demonstrate the advantages of jet propulsion for commercial aircraft. It served as the basic design for the KC-135 tanker and the famous Boeing 707 airliner. Costing Boeing $16 million in 1954, the equivalent of $175 million today, this was an enormous risk for Boeing to build an aircraft for, at the time, they had no committed customers for it. This is the only aircraft Boeing built in this style, and was operated from 1954 to 1969. Retired in 1970, the aircraft sat for nearly 2 decades before being donated to the Smithsonian, where it was restored and put on display and sits today. If you don't know what this aircraft is, I don't know where you've been. This is the Concorde. The Concorde is a tailless aircraft with narrow fuselage, permitting 4 breast seating for 92 to 128 passengers. The delta wing shape with a drop nose for better landing visibility is powered by 4 Rolls-Royce Olympus 593 turbojets with a variable intake ramps and a reheat or afterburner for takeoff and acceleration at supersonic speeds. Equipped with the very first fly-by-wire control system, the Concorde cruised at 60,000 feet and a supercruise speed of Mach 2.04 for for nearly 4,000 nautical miles. It could make the trip from New York Kennedy Airport to London Heathrow in half the time of a regular commercial aircraft. However, carrying only 128 passengers, the per-seat mile cost of the Concorde was incredibly high for the time, averaging 4.2 cents per seat mile. For comparisons, the Boeing 747, which carried 3 times the amount of passengers, operated for only 2.4 cents per seat mile. In 2003, after only 27 years of operation, the Concorde was retired from commercial service. Due to rising fuel cost, a tragic incident, and the general noise created by the aircraft at takeoff, limiting which airports in the world would allow the Concorde to operate, both British Airways and Air France ceased operations. Of the 20 built, 18 remain, with 16 of those aircraft on display for public viewing around the world. Well, if you've hung around this long, you are in for a treat. If you haven't hung around this long, well, guess what you're missing? This is the Space Shuttle Discovery. Now, this is the third space shuttle we've seen. About 10 years ago in New York City, we saw the Enterprise, which, yes, I know, never went to actually into outer space and was strictly an atmospheric testbed. Nevertheless, it's still considered a space shuttle. About 4 years ago, we were at Kennedy Space Center, where Atlantis is on display. Now, Atlantis is hanging about 25 feet in the air on an angle with its cargo bay doors open, mimicking how the orbiter looked in outer space. Unlike Discovery, sitting on its landing gear, allowing you to get much closer and get a feel of just how big the orbiter really was. Or in what I discovered being up close and personal with Discovery, how small the orbiter actually is. Now, as a Canadian visiting an American museum, the other thing I found very nice and very welcoming was the fact that the Canada arm from Discovery was front and center on the display. Most people don't realize this, but on the belly of the space shuttle, just behind the main landing gear, there's 2 10-inch fuel ports. Now, once you understand what the ports are for, it makes complete sense. That's the connection point for the main fuel tank, which fed fuel to the 3 main engines of the orbiter, since the space shuttle had no internal fuel tanks for its 3 primary engines. Now, normally, when we saw a space shuttle on the launch pad ready to go, these ports are open, but the main fuel tank would block them and you couldn't see them. And once on orbit and the main fuel tank has been jettisoned, 2 doors would swing shut over top of the port to protect the underbelly of the orbiter from the heat of reentry. So in a standard landing configuration, as Discovery is modeled here, those doors are closed so you wouldn't see the ports on the ground either. Now, the engines on display with Discovery are not its original RS-25 engines. These are just mock-ups, as the Space Shuttle RS-25 main engines have been repurposed to power NASA's Space Launch System as part of the Artemis project to return to the Moon. Now there is way more to see here. And like I said, we were about 4 hours going through. So to try and condense 4 hours into 10 minutes just doesn't happen. So if you hung around for the 10 minutes and saw the basic highlights, I appreciate that. So please give the video a like. Subscribe to the channel if you don't mind. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.